Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee.
Good afternoon. Welcome to In Session. I'm your host, Dr. Farid Holakouee, and I'll be with you for the next 2 hours here on Radio Hamra. Studio number to call in, 310-441-0555. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, so you can call in with any questions related to clinical psychology, including any emotional or psychological issues, parenting issues, and relationship issues as well. You can also follow me on Twitter or Instagram or like my page on Facebook to get updates on the show or suggest topics or books for the program. And the shows are uploaded at the end of each week to my SoundCloud page and podcast on iTunes and Spotify. Again, our studio number 310-441-0555. The book of the week for this week is Disability Visibility, which is edited by Alice Wong. Disability Visibility, First-Person Stories from the 21st Century. And it's a collection of essays from different individuals with different disabilities sharing their stories, their experience. And it's edited by Alice Wong. I'm only maybe 25, 30 pages into the book, but I'm still actually reeling from it last night, what I read, which I'll share a little bit about. Of course, the book I'll talk about in total on Monday's show next week. But so 2 weeks ago, the book of the week was The Life You Can Save by Peter Singer, who is an Australian philosopher and known as one of the most important and influential philosophers of our time or currently living. And I was very moved by that book, The Life You Can Save, and it also has an organization with the same name and related charities that was all about how we can all do more to help other people. And literally, for many individuals living in relative, even not wealth, but wealth compared to the rest of the world, you could donate an amount of money that would save a life or save lives. And so he was arguing in that book from a philosophical and also really a moral and human standpoint that we should all be doing more, and how could we be okay with not doing less when we can see that what we're spending money on, or the money we're saving, or some of that money that we're saving, could literally save someone's life. How can we say it's more important what we're buying with it or saving it for when a life is at stake? And I was very moved by the book, and I talked about it and was very moved by the author, Peter Singer, and was looking at him as a moral leader, so to speak. And also, actually, I came across his name because he has written some very influential books on animal rights and veganism from a moral standpoint. And I found this other book, The Life You Can Save. I've already ordered a book of his to come in October, a new book on animal rights, and to sort of bolster my own understanding of being vegan, which I started 2 weeks ago, and the implications morally and so forth. So I'm looking forward to that book. But then when I started this book, I look at the first chapter, and I start the first chapter, and I see that this woman who's writing the first chapter, maybe I can find her name. Let's see. Harriet McBride Johnson. She, I think, recently passed, but in the book, she was sharing her experience going to meet with a professor who actually was saying that maybe her life was not worth living in some, so to speak, or that parents who have children who are born handicapped or with certain disabilities should have the choice of killing their child when the child is born. I know it sounds egregious even to say. And who's the professor she's meeting with who has this view? None other than Peter Singer. And so I was really thrown for a loop and shocked. I had heard of Peter Singer before, but really got familiar with him just recently in the past few weeks. And as I mentioned, was very moved by him, saw some of his talks, and felt like he was someone that was morally and intellectually someone I would look up to. Then when I saw this argument of his, and I looked it up a little bit, I have to do more research, and I'm sure I will before Monday's show to talk about that aspect of the book. Again, that's one of maybe 20, 30 essays in the book. But still, to make sure I'm more aware of what he has said. But I did see that this is really what he is talking about. There's his argument is something about how do we approach the life of people who are disabled for parents, and that parents, I think, as he put it, have the right to choose if they want that child, or even the wording was something like replace the child, I think, meaning by a child who could be adopted or something like that. But very much treating people and these human beings like commodities, which is so strange because he's someone who promotes animal rights and even is aware of something like speciesism, where we might prefer human beings to other animals and feel like we can do anything we want to the other animals. And he seems very much in favor of actually promoting the rights of animals. So I was shocked to see that he could talk about human beings in such a way. And still, I'm trying to comprehend and process it. Like I said, it was a lot for me to take in because I was not expecting that coming from him. I actually saw the back cover of the book said there's a conversation with Peter Singer, and I was like, oh, great, let's see what he says. And I was expecting him to be very much in favor of the rights and the lives of individuals with disabilities, but then was shocked and really horrified to see really the opposite. And so as I'm still thinking about this, it's a reminder that when we look up to people or we might admire people, they're human beings that are multifaceted, and they might have good ideas about something and maybe some ideas that you strongly disagree with in another area, and that can be okay. A lot of times when we try to turn human beings into gods and think that everything they think must be right because this person is so wise or smart or morally, aware, we put them on a pedestal that assumes everything about them must be right and true. And that's not the case. I actually recently was talking about this whole movement about statues and monuments here in the United States, and that I often think building a monument or a statue to a whole person, to one person, might be a mistake altogether. That rather than putting a statue for a person, we can put a statue for a movement or something that person did. Let's say civil rights or fighting for, creating the United States and the Constitution. Let's say a statue for the Constitution, but not necessarily a statue of an individual, because people are imperfect. And so there's things they've done that are maybe really bad also, or that we really disagree with now. And it creates these complexities of trying to understand how to remember them, but we can remember something they did. And so I'm kind of faced with that now with Peter Singer, of trying to understand him more. I want to read more about what he has said, but that when it comes to things like animal rights, I might very much agree with him. When it comes to encouraging and really strongly encouraging everyone to do more to save the lives of people who are facing extreme poverty, lives that can be saved, avoidable deaths, that we all should be doing more as individuals and as nations and the whole world. And I strongly agree with that, and still am happy that he is doing that work and would support that work. While at the same time, I might strongly disagree with his view on individuals with disabilities and their life and death, and if their life is even worth living. And as I said, I have to go deeper into his views to understand it better. But what I read was very shocking for me. And so for me, it was another reminder that we always have to still think for ourselves. Very often what we like to do is find someone, sometimes it's a group, whatever, some kind of organization, even religion in a way can have this same type of thing for sure, that we will do the thinking for us. I don't have to think anymore. I just follow this religion, I follow this ideology, or I follow this individual, and I don't have to think, they think for me. And it's very dangerous, and we can never let ourselves go there. Even as you listen to me, I don't think anyone's necessarily putting me on that pedestal, but I hope when you hear me, as much as it's me speaking and you're listening, it's an active process of listening, not just you passively hearing what I'm saying and taking it in, but that you hear it, you think about it, you even question it, you see if it makes sense for you. You might qualify some of the things I say. You might completely disagree with what I'm saying, and that's good. It reminds me of Eric Fromm's book, The Art of Being, where it was, when we look at even reading a book, he was saying we shouldn't think of it as just a passive experience, but an active one where you're having a conversation essentially with the author. You're hearing what he or she is saying, and you are thinking about it. Essentially, of course, you can't have a conversation where they can really respond to you, but you're thinking about it and having this engaged mental process with it, not just taking it in and being receptive to anything that is being said without your own critical thinking, evaluation, and even application, seeing if it works and makes sense for you. So that was something really interesting that I quickly had built someone up, and then at some level they got partially torn down. But as I said, maybe that's more realistic. Even when we look at great scientists, I talked about the book Why Trust Science on Monday by Naomi Oreskes, a very, really fascinating book, especially with everything that's going on now with who do we trust and who has the facts. And even if a vaccine for coronavirus is created, many people say they won't take it because they don't trust the scientists and they think there's a big conspiracy going on about that. But in that book, it was talking about how we have to be humble as scientists and individuals and as a society, how we look at things, and that scientists also have to be aware of not straying out of their realm of expertise. And even in their realm of expertise, they can be wrong. Einstein made incredible discoveries and advancements for the scientific community, but he also made scientific claims that were wrong and hypotheses and theories and formulas that turned out to not be true. Doesn't mean that what he contributed was not good or very meaningful, but it means that we have to be realistic and aware that just because he made some great advancements and he was a genius, it doesn't mean everything he said and did was right. Not only that, people also will share his views on other things. And I'm not saying they have no value to say, what did Einstein say about love or education or other things? Einstein is wonderful, actually. In the room I'm in, I can see a biography of his in one of the books that I'm staring at. So, I don't devalue his contribution in any way. What I think could be a challenge for us or can be problematic is when we think, well, because it's Einstein and we associate Einstein with genius and smartness and intelligence and all those good things, anything he said about anything has to be true, when even anything he's had to say about physics wasn't even true. So we have to just be careful not to think, well, what did Einstein say about love? Oh, then that has to be the truth about love. And same with anyone else that you admire or think is intellectually wise or has something to contribute. We still have to do the thinking for ourselves. You hear me say something about parenting, you might agree, you might disagree. You might go check and see what I said doesn't really make sense or isn't even what many other experts are saying. That's fine. And that could be maybe my view is slightly different and I could be very wrong actually at the same time too. So it's just a reminder that we have to think for ourselves. And sometimes we can be disappointed even by people that, I don't want to use the word hero, that sometimes could be a powerful word, but sometimes we are. We can get disappointed by someone that we admire and think that, wow, they are so wise, they're so smart, how could I ever disagree with them? And then you see their thoughts on something and recognize I completely do disagree. So I will look more into this. Peter Singer is someone that I've mentioned on the show a lot recently because I came across his work more recently. Initially, the more positive things that I agreed with, but now something that I was even hurt by. It was hard to read the arguments that were being presented, but I'll look into it more so I further my understanding of it. And by next Monday's show, of course, I'll complete the book, Disability Visibility, and I'm really enjoying it so far and looking forward to reading it, because one of the things I try to keep in mind on this show is, of course, first for myself to grow and understand that there are individuals who are at times neglected by society or not taken care of by society, or as the title implies, invisible to society. Oftentimes people with disabilities have been seen that way or not seen for who they are and even really existing. I think that's what's so painful about that argument. It's almost like saying they shouldn't exist. But in this book, it's first person accounts where people are sharing their stories of what their experience is like. And I'm sure I hope to gain a lot from that or learn a lot from what people experience. And I look forward to sharing that with you on next Monday's show. All right, let's go to a commercial break. Studio number 310-441-0555. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Studio number 310-441-0555. I think we have some callers. Let's go to one now. Radio Hamra, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, hi, thanks for calling.
Hi, Dr. Holakouee. Thanks for your useful program.
Thank you. My pleasure. How can I help you? Go ahead.
I'm having a set of problems recently, and I'm just having problems to come to terms with all of these, really. I'm a doctor in training, and I work in a hospital. So I was really looking forward to start a new rotation because as part of training, we have to do different rotations. And I was supposed to start a rotation in August, and I was really excited about it because, you know, that's a job I never had, and I wanted to add to my CV, and it sounded very good to me, really. I found it very exciting. However, just a few weeks before starting the job, I found out that I'm pregnant. And obviously, because of this COVID crisis, and obviously hospitals do risk assessment for COVID, I kind of informed our HR or human resources, and they said to me that because of COVID and pregnancy, going to this hospital is not really safe for you, and we have to change you to another job. And at that point of time, I thought, okay, this is a reasonable decision because obviously the pregnancy obviously comes first, and I do everything to make sure the pregnancy goes, as safe as it could be. So I was changed to a different job. It sounded safer because it was based on community, and obviously it didn't have the risk of going to general hospital and general ward. But unfortunately, after they moved me, 2 weeks after all of this, I went for a scan, and they couldn't find a heartbeat, and the pregnancy was terminated.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Apparently 2 weeks before all of this. So I kind of found myself in a very difficult situation because suddenly I felt like I was at loss at both sides. I lost the job, obviously, and also I lost the pregnancy at the same time. So I just found it very difficult to deal with all of this. And obviously, with a miscarriage, there's not much I could do. I was in shock for a few days, and I just had to accept it because if the pregnancy is gone, it's gone. But then I tried to go back to the job I really wanted to because now obviously I could start a job. But because they exchanged me for a different person, it was a guy they sent to that job instead of me. That guy didn't accept to, change with me again or exchange with me again. So he kind of resisted moving. And I ended up being in a job I really don't like, and also losing a pregnancy. So I just feel really at loss at both sides, and I'm just not, I couldn't really put my mind at ease and accept it because it was really difficult.
That sounds extremely difficult, and we have to, and I hope you will be patient with yourself in getting through this. That there's so much to deal with in multiple ways, because even being at the job you are at now, unfortunately, in some ways is a subtle reminder of the pregnancy and what happened also. So that could be underlying that. And I know you said about losing the pregnancy, there's nothing you can do. It happened, and there's nothing you can do to change that, and that's true. It is the reality, a very sad reality. Although I hope at the same time you don't undermine or give yourself that space to grieve, because many people after a miscarriage, they think, well, especially because of our tendency to want to deny or avoid feelings, or when people are trying to be supportive, they often give this kind of advice of saying, well, you didn't have the baby, so even they'll undermine or minimize the loss, that not much was lost. But many women who have gone through a miscarriage, it takes them a long time to grieve. Even sometimes they still think about that baby they could have had, child they could have had years later. And so I'm not saying necessarily you have to have that experience and have those feelings, but I just want to make sure, because so often feelings related to grieving miscarriages are so undermined, I don't want you to feel that pressure or to feel that either. It can be understandable that you're very sad about this, everything you had to go through physically. And also, yes, you were pregnant and didn't have the baby yet, but you usually start to build a connection with your baby even when you're pregnant and thinking about the future and so many other things that I don't want to give you something to be sad about, but I just want you to give yourself that space that it could be. Grieving is not something just simple when it comes to something like a miscarriage. It's a very unique type of grieving because you never physically saw the child, but it doesn't mean it doesn't have a big impact. So just something important to keep in mind. But yeah, it seems like you have gone through a very challenging time. And if I may ask, how long ago was the miscarriage?
So miscarriage happened when I was around like 6 weeks. So it was about actually 2 weeks ago, or about, it was about 2 weeks ago that I was told that there is no heartbeat. And it was very early loss. But then, I kind of blame myself for actually telling human resources about the early pregnancy, which wasn't confirmed on a scan. I just blame myself. I'm thinking that if I didn't tell them about this, I at least could have the job, because when I told them about the pregnancy, the scan was not done at that point. But I felt like I had to tell them because of obviously COVID crisis and how hospitals are struggling, and every hospital is doing a COVID risk assessment now for even the junior doctors in training. So, but after I lost both, I kind of blame myself for even actually opening my mouth and telling them about this, because at that point I think I got them worried that we can have a pregnant woman on the department. We have to move her. Obviously, like 2 weeks after this, there was even no baby.
Well, so, I can understand. I understand you're not obviously happy with the result, of course, of the miscarriage, but even just professionally, what has happened now, it's very heartbreaking to have the job you want, and then because you get pregnant and you inform them, you lose that job, and then you lose the baby, which is devastating, and now you can't go back and get that job which you left because of the baby, which you now don't get to have. It's heartbreaking. It's very, very sad, and I hope, I can understand you not being happy with the result, but I would hope you could recognize your action, as you said yourself, was probably the right action or made sense to inform them of what's going on. And so very often we maybe don't like the result of a decision we made, but we always have to try to go back to the moment where we made the decision, not the moment where the results happened, because when you made the decision, to me, it made complete sense. It was probably the morally right thing to do. You probably wouldn't have felt good had the pregnancy continued. What would you have done down the line if, the baby, of course, was developing and now you're showing, and now without telling them, you probably would face a whole bunch of other issues that would be much worse. So I think it was the right decision, even if it didn't give you the right result or a result you feel good about. And so I hope that would make you not blame yourself. What you're going through isn't because of something wrong or bad you did. In a lot of ways, it was just an unfortunate, very, very unfortunate circumstances that you are facing, but you're not responsible for them. Very often when we are going through something really bad and we're hurting, we look for someone to blame. It's the fastest response is, okay, who made this happen? And I think it's unfair to put that blame on yourself that you have made this happen, even if you are in a situation you don't like, which, yes, you can go back and see how could have some part of it been different. If you didn't tell them that that makes sense, it would have been different. But I don't think you would have felt like it's the right thing to do from what you've told me so far.
But I mean, the problem I'm having here is that because I really feel at loss on both sides. So
Yeah.
I think that my difficulty is just how to come to terms with the feeling of loss, because I was just feeling that I'm such a loser, really. I lost both things that I was really excited for. But I just don't know within myself how to accept this result and just, come to terms with it.
Yeah. Well, let me actually, before I answer that part, when you said I'm a loser, what did you, I mean, I get that you've lost two things that are very significant, but loser, at least the way it's sometimes used in an American way, it's very much judging ourselves like we are bad in some way. Is that what you meant by loser?
No, I think I'm kind of wanting to say that obviously the both things that were quite important to me, I lost
Yeah.
them both. Just in a very short period of time, in a period of 10
Yeah.
weeks.
I mean, I get that. Yeah, that part I can get that you've experienced two big losses, and in some ways they're connected because of what you explained about the work and the pregnancy. So I can understand it's very hurtful. And 2 weeks after the miscarriage, I'm not surprised you're still sad or hurting. So it could take some time, and I hope you'll give yourself that space that it's not that you should just bounce back and feel good right now. It's understandable that you're not feeling good, and it's still lingering because you're at the workplace that you don't want to be in, which, as I said, unfortunately might be this subtle reminder of the loss. It's like I'm here, I don't want to be here, and I'm here because of this really horrible thing that happened to me or I had to experience related to it. So I can get that it's very challenging. And so I hope you'll give yourself that space, and we could talk about it some more too of what might help. But one of the things is it will take some time, that after 2 weeks, I would not expect for you to be feeling totally fine about what's happening. It would be expected that it's going to be painful what you're going through. Who do you have around you? I'm not sure if you're married, if your husband is in the picture helping you. Who do you have around you that is giving you support during this time?
Yes, my fiance is around, and
Okay.
he is also very supportive. So
Good.
he kind of thinks that, at that point of time you made the right decision to tell
Yeah.
them, but unfortunately this has happened.
Yeah.
So he thinks that it wasn't, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
He thinks that at that point of time it was very reasonable to go to a community job rather than a hospital job. Obviously, the COVID is still a problem and the cases are rising. So for the pregnancy, he believes that it was, it was definitely more risk. But then obviously with the news also, he was quite, devastated with all the news. But he is very supportive.
Okay, good. I'm glad he is, and I'm sure he's devastated too. I was mentioning, of course, that for the mother, physically going through the process can be even more challenging, but the father of the baby also can experience a lot of grief as well. So it's something you're both going through together. As is usually the case, it might be in slightly different ways because also with your work it's related, and being the mother, that might be a different level or type of connection that you had with the baby. But this is a challenging time. And I think what you're going through, as he said, it doesn't make it easier to not blame yourself, the pain of what happened, but I hope it'll remove one more layer of bad feeling that comes with this if you're putting that guilt and blame on yourself. And what I was going to say, this is a little bit, I know, hard to comprehend, or people have different views on this because it gets into some things of when is a baby and when is life and all those things, and I'm not trying to open up that type of a discussion, but I was thinking how by telling HR and making those decisions, you were doing the right thing and you were giving love to that baby by making the best choice for also that baby while he or she, or that it, whatever you want to call it, was alive, and to give it the best chance. So I think you made the most loving and right decision as well for that baby. And of course, it's unfortunate what happened, but I hope you can feel good about that decision, that I made the most loving decision for that unborn child. And of course, the result was not what you wanted, but you did something, I think, very right in taking care of yourself and in taking care of that unborn child.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yes, I think as I mentioned earlier, the part I'm blaming myself for, I was thinking that a lot of women wait to announce a pregnancy when they see a baby on a scan, maybe 12-week scan or something, when it's more confirmed. And I certainly could have waited to have that scan and tell work, but I think the only reason I announced it a little bit early it was because of obviously COVID and the problems with it. So, but I kind of go back and think maybe I should have waited a bit longer, waited for a scan. At least I could have saved my job. Maybe I couldn't save the baby, but I could save the job.
Well, and maybe, and in hindsight, it seems like that could have likely been the result. I still can see how, as soon as you knew, telling them felt like the right thing, and I think you did the right thing, but you don't feel good about the result, which is understandable. Now, because there's so much here, and if you're okay with it, I'll put you on hold, and after the break, we'll talk a bit more about what you're also emotionally going through and what this process of grieving might be like. How does that sound?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. All right. My pleasure. You're listening to In Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Before the break, we were with a caller. Let's go back to her now. Caller, are you still there?
Hello, yes. Thank you, Dr. Holakouee, for bringing me back.
Of course, my pleasure. I'm very happy I get to talk to you. I'm very sorry and sad of what you've had to go through recently, and even during the break, I was thinking about it. It's really heartbreaking, and I'm hoping, as I mentioned before, that you'll be kind to yourself in this process when it comes to the blame, and to give yourself that space. You're a medical doctor, so I'm not telling you something you don't know and something you know much better than me, but even hormonally after a miscarriage for, I think even a month or 2 months, there can be some hormones related to pregnancy in the body as well, which can further complicate what you are going through. And so you really have to give even your body some time to recover from what's happened, along with your emotional body. And the miscarriage, the grief from losing a pregnancy is not something that's talked about a lot for many reasons. One, we don't talk about a lot of painful and uncomfortable things, but also because a miscarriage can at times happen before people have told, lots of people are told anyone, sometimes there's really not that process to then tell them, because we feel like, well, they don't even know about the pregnancy. I'm not going to tell them the pregnancy has ended. And so that grief can very often be done alone, or we feel like we have to hide it, or we don't really get the same type of support we generally do when people are aware of what we are going through. So I'm glad you have your fiance, who you've said has been very supportive. Is there anyone else that you have had to support you in this, that might have known about the pregnancy, or that you told them afterwards because of the pain and what you were going through?
I don't have my family, my immediate family here, but yes, I told them about this. Obviously, it's all over the phone and over WhatsApp calls, and they were trying to support me, and they were very understanding. But apart from that, I didn't tell my colleagues at work because it was very early. I just felt that I had to tell, important HR people and my boss. And even if, when I was moved to this job, to the current community job, before starting the job, my boss actually told a lot of nurses about this. And when I started the job, only last week, when I went to work on the first day, everyone were congratulating me, and I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, for some of them, I just had to tell them right in a, now my first sentence didn't know that I lost the baby. And it was just very awkward and difficult experience. And my boss apologized, obviously. It's not her fault. I mean,
Right.
There's nothing wrong that she did, but, when I went to work, obviously they were all expecting me to, they were expecting a pregnant lady, and I was there, and I had to tell them that I lost the baby. And unfortunately, when I changed the job, I really didn't like it at all. It just, the type of patients I see, it's not the usual type of patients. It's very out of my field. And the job I was supposed to go was actually very interesting for me, and it is very competitive to get into. So, in a way, there is no way I can get it back. And that's why I just feel like I'm really at loss, because that was maybe the only opportunity to get into it. And then, obviously, because I opened my mouth about pregnancy, I just automatically lost it.
Well, I mean, I know you can't. You're saying get it back right now. I don't know enough about the details, but I assume that it doesn't mean you can't ever have it back again, which still is frustrating because you did have it literally right, on your fingertips, and we're starting it. But even the way you say it, I understand. I opened my mouth, but really, you said the right thing and you did the right thing, which sometimes we can not feel like much of a consolation when the result isn't something we like. But I hope you will have that respect for yourself for what you did, as I mentioned in the last segment, even if the result was something you didn't like. And yeah, the pain of people knowing, and then of course they're going to be excited. And as you said, it wasn't your boss's fault to come and say congratulations and be excited for you, but the circumstance was that what they said was very hurtful, or brought up a pain, or it was painful to tell them. Not that we always know, but was there any potential cause that you were aware of for the miscarriage that the doctors said could have been involved? I know very often there isn't a clear cause. Miscarriages happen more than many people know about because it's not always talked about. But did you get any information from the doctors about that?
Unfortunately, no, Dr. Holakouee. They said, I asked them, and they said it's a $1 million question. We really don't know the cause. But, it just, they were quite sure that there wasn't any heartbeat. And obviously, it's just a really shocking moment, because at that moment, everything went down for me.
Yeah,
and
of course.
My partner hasn't told his family yet about the miscarriage. And this is something that we need to do over the next few weeks.
Yeah.
But then it was quite, I wasn't given any cause for this.
Yeah, very often there isn't, people don't have a clear cause. Sometimes it's more, they might have some reasons they might think, but a lot of times it's not known. And yet telling people is also a very sad process too, because sometimes like you're experiencing, it's different waves, and then you have to go through it again of your own feelings, but then their feelings about it, and that also can be challenging. Now, as I mentioned, you're going to have likely a painful process of grieving that you're still in, and I hope you'll give yourself that space, that it's only been a few weeks and you're still in it in so many ways, physically, still telling people, as you were saying, with your fiance's family. So there's so many aspects to this. So I hope you'll give yourself that time and space to grieve this genuine loss. Looking forward also, now I don't want to move you, but just because of our time and talking with each other, there can be some things to look at, because clearly this had a big impact on you professionally and even more strongly personally. So what do you think about looking forward? How has this changed, even let's say about wanting to get pregnant again, if that's something you'd like to do? And you mentioned some things about your work, but I want us to look forward a bit too. Tell me a bit about that, what you have on your mind.
I'm very looking forward to, have the baby again in the future, because this pregnancy was, very well planned, and both of us were really looking forward to this.
Hmm.
It's the first pregnancy it was for me, and also my fiancé doesn't have any children from any previous relationships. So we were both very, very, very looking forward to this. We were very excited. And so, I mean, looking forward, we definitely want to, have the baby or become pregnant again. And also, in terms of jobs and professions, I'm in the last 6 months of my training, and basically, this current job I have is basically my last opportunity as a training doctor. After that, when I get my degree, I'm no longer in training, and I can work as a consultant or attendant. But I think for me, still the pregnancy comes as a priority. So
Okay.
probably if I become pregnant in the next month or so, I probably looking at having, giving myself a break from job. Because, overall it's very stressful. The current job I'm having is very, very stressful. I'm on an on-call rota, and I think it's just too much stress at the same time that I'm grieving. So I think after finishing the job in 6 months, I'm probably looking at giving myself a break from, from medical training and medical jobs, and focus on myself and maybe have another try for the baby, I think.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like you said the priority is to have a child, but of course you're in your training as well, so trying to make that balance. Now, one thing also, as you might even anticipate, people who have experienced, women who've experienced a miscarriage, when they're getting pregnant again, or if they get pregnant again, there can be an anxiety because of what they experienced, which we can understand. So there might be that. It doesn't mean something bad has to happen, but when we have a bad experience in a certain domain or a certain type of experience, we usually have an anxiety that will come up the next time we're in that situation. And it varies from person to person, case to case, but something for you to be ready for, that it might be there. I've seen that with many people. They have that experience. Sometimes they say they want to wait even longer to tell anyone because of that. Even sometimes a pregnant mother might have a harder time connecting with the baby, even after birth, but before, because of that. They don't want to create that connection, get attached when there's that fear of losing. So I've talked to people even recently who've gone through that experience where they had been pregnant several times, and because they lost the baby when they became pregnant again, they kind of were almost in this, not denial, but didn't want to fully accept it because it was too scary to get their hopes up and the fears of losing it again because of how painful that was. So we can be aware that this might have some lingering effects, and that's okay. At some level, it's to be expected that that's happening. And I do wish you the best, both personally and professionally. And professionally, I know it's sad to have had something like maybe, I don't know if it's dream job, but a job you wanted very strongly right there, and then to lose it for something so tragic too. It's very painful. Hopefully, though, there's a bigger picture here that you will get to be in that position or have even better ones in the future as you go forward. And I hope again you'll give yourself that time. It's only been a few weeks, that this will take some time to grieve and get past. I'm glad you have your fiance's support. It seems like he's being understanding. Unfortunately, at times I've seen families where they say, you shouldn't be sad about it, or we should be over it already. But I'm glad he's recognizing and you're recognizing this is a heavy situation that will take some time to heal. And the best thing you guys can do is to support each other and heal and go through it together. It might be and likely is a dark time, but doesn't mean that darkness will last forever. And I'm hoping for brighter days for you and him, and soon to be growing family in the near future.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Holakouee. I mean, sometimes I think it's a very selfish thought I'm having these days, that I think, I hope, sometimes I find myself hoping for the guy who went instead of me to that job. It's a very selfish thing, but sometimes I think that I hope that he gives up on that job or just changes his mind. So if he leaves, then I will be automatically going to that job. I know it's a very a hopeless thing. But I mean, I
Well,
just
it's
feel
not.
that if that
Yeah.
guy accepted it, because he was asked to move, and then he said, I don't want to move. And that's why I was stuck in this position, really.
Sure. I mean, I understand you're saying it feels maybe like selfish or not something you like, that you have this feeling of something, him changing or something happening. We can understand that you had that position. You left for a reason that was you being upfront and trying to be proactive and make the right choice. Then you had to go through this horrible tragedy, and then going back to what was yours and seeing that someone is there doesn't feel good, and you feel like that's rightfully yours. Now, I mean, I would say I can understand your feeling completely, and then if we put ourselves in his shoes, we can probably understand that he started the position and doesn't want to change. I don't know how expected it is for someone to then change because of what you're going through. I can see how you feel like maybe knowing the circumstances, it would make sense for him to go through something even inconvenient to give you back that position. But I don't know enough to really make a comment on that other than to say I can see how someone starting a position doesn't want to then go and change again. You know, due to the circumstance, but I could completely understand your feeling that you don't like that he's there, and at some point you might even, maybe not yet, get to the point where you can, I don't know if forgive is the right term, but lose some of that anger towards him, or heal some of that anger towards him, to recognize he's maybe making what's the best decision for him, and we can understand that at some level, even if that decision creates a situation you don't like for yourself that feels unfair. He's in that position and going through his training now, and he's probably thinking that makes sense for him to continue to not disrupt his training. But I can see how it makes you upset. It's understandable that you would wish somehow that position opens up. My thought is that also, bigger picture, you likely will be able to be in that position and even better ones in the future when you finish your training and are working. So try to keep that in mind as well, that right now you probably feel so bad. Understandably, you want something to make you feel better quickly, or even this will feel like some kind of justice. At least I've gotten my job back. So the loss was really horrible of the baby, but at least it was only that one loss, not this double loss that I've experienced. So I can understand that desire to want to feel better and to feel like there's some sense of justice in this. Right now, it just probably feels very unfair. And you're right to feel that it does feel unfair. So I can understand that feeling, and we'll see how it goes. Give yourself, like I said, space that you're going to probably go through a lot of feelings. As you know, grief brings with it anger and sadness and, bargaining and all the different stages of grief, but even ones that aren't included in that 5. So be ready for yourself to go through a whole lot. And I'm wishing again the best for you and your fiance, and hopefully, growing family soon to come.
Thank you so much, Dr. Holakouee.
My
Really
pleasure.
found it
So nice
useful.
talking to you.
Talking
Thank
to
you.
you.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you so much.
Wishing you all the best. Take care.
Thank you so
All
much.
right.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers. All right. Let's go to another commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Studio number 310-441-0555. Let's go to another caller. Radio Hamra, you're on the air.
Oh, hi there. Can
Hi.
you hear me?
I can. Thanks for calling. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Dr. Holakouee Jr. It's a pleasure and it's an honor talking to you.
Likewise.
Yes, actually I'm calling you. First of all, I do apologize. I've been online for quite some time, so the battery of my phone is going down. I don't know how long it's going to last, so I'm going to make it very quick.
Okay. Go ahead.
The gist of the story is that actually I contacted your dad about 2.5 years ago. It was about a marital problem I had, and he shed some light about the fact that I have to face the fact that I have to really see how things are, and the more anyway. Fast forward, I filed for divorce about 1.5 years ago, officially. And I have got a 9-year-old child, and she's the only child. She doesn't have any siblings. And unfortunately, what has happened is that my husband has taken the strategy of dragging things on and on and on. Unfortunately, I've also been quite unlucky with the court proceedings where I am. It's been quite a lot of delay because the courts are extremely busy. And then we had all this COVID-19 saga, and how it has made things even worse. And I've had the first hearing back in January. The second hearing is going to be in November. He doesn't really want to negotiate anything between solicitors. And the whole process of lockdown was awful, really, for us not getting on with each other and me trying to move forward, getting on with our lives, and, trying to have an environment that is going to be not so toxic for my child. From the other hand, he just doesn't cooperate. What has happened also during the lockdown, I had to do all the homeschooling as well with my child, so it was adding extra pressure. And she happens to be quite angry with me. She sees this divorce process as it's my fault. This is what I am doing. And she projects that anger to me quite a lot. But somehow, I don't know, I'm trying to help her out with however I can. But to just give you an example, about a couple of months ago, she had a bad dream. And her bad dream was about she was left by me in a shop, and I left her, apparently to be sold. And there was another lady walking to the shop to buy her out. She apparently looked like me, but from what she's telling me, I look quite creepy. And she was horrible to her. And she was really, anyway, she woke up, but believe it or not, it's still 2 months, and she still goes on and on and on about this bad dream, about me. Literally is abandoned. I think she feels that I'm going to leave. That's not true. That's not the case at all. But I don't know, first of all, how can I help her in terms of managing her anger? I don't know why she's so angry with me all of a sudden, because I'm the one does everything. I'm the one arranges all the play dates. I'm the one does all the schoolwork. I'm the one that all the time tells her that, I don't know, pick up your socks, put your dirty clothes in the laundry, whatever it is. But anyway, I'm reaching out for advice, really.
Well, so I mean, there's a lot more for me to hear to really understand the full picture. Divorce is always challenging, even if it's the right choice. It's going to be challenging for the couple, but even more on the kids. So your child is the only child, takes on all of that herself, and that's going to be hard for her. It's hard to say exactly what that dream meant. I had a lot of thoughts pop into my head. But when we look at the anger, there can be a lot of reasons why a child is angry or shows anger towards one parent. Of course, there could be things you're doing that she doesn't like. So I don't want you to just think if she's angry, it's not about anything you're doing. It's about her, or it's about her father. We always want to take a close look at what we are doing and what we can change that can help. And at the same time, not to say it's all this, but sometimes when a child is going through something that's painful or they're angry, they might express the anger towards the parent that they feel like is more receptive to it, or they can express it to. So for example, I've worked with families that if one parent is very angry and the child is scared of that parent, they might actually show the anger to the other parent because it feels safer or easier to express that anger. So again, I don't want to say something that takes you completely off the hook to say any anger she's showing you is about the divorce and about her father, but we want to be aware that we don't personalize it either, that it means I'm a bad mom, or she doesn't like me, or her dad is winning in some battle between who's the better parent or who she loves more, because then we start to do things that hurt the child and aren't good parenting to try to win. And anytime we create a war between our either spouse or ex-spouse, what we're doing is we're firing bullets, and our kid or our kids are in between, and they're the ones that are taking the majority of the bullets and getting wounded and hurt the most. So we want to make sure we don't engage, even if one partner or one ex-partner starts creating a war, that we don't want to engage in that war, because our child or children will be the biggest casualty. They'll get hurt the most. So in her dream, although it might seem like she's saying, "Oh, you're going to leave me," we want to pay attention more to the fear of "you're going to leave me," or maybe that you're going to be replaced. Now, is that you being meaner to her? Could there be something about a stepmom or something that she's scared about that would be like you? So it's like a mom, but a creepy version, a bad version. But either way, this is scary for a 9-year-old to go through these changes and separation and two different homes and all sorts of things. So we want to, especially her dream, but even what she even says, but especially a dream, we don't want to take personally to say, why in your dream do you imagine me leaving you? I would never leave you. How could you say such a thing? You know, people have dreams that are all sorts of things that might not be really connected to reality or reflective of reality, but we don't want to take them personally. So whatever dream she has, I can understand it doesn't feel good for you to hear a dream where you're leaving her at a store, but imagine for her there's some fear of losing you, some fear of being alone or being left or being with a parent who's creepy and really mean. Something is going on, and we want to pay attention to that feeling more than the character we are in that dream, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's the thing. You know, we have had conversation about this dream time and time again. And time again, she says that, "Mommy, but it wasn't you, but it was you. You were so mean to me in the dream." And the more I'm trying to explain, "Mommy, it was just a bad dream. You know, everybody has got bad dreams." But apparently the dream in her head was so vivid that after weeks, she's still talking about it. She's still thinking about it. And somehow, maybe part of me thinks that somehow she's trying to internalize something within her. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into this.
Well,
but I'm trying to help her out.
I would listen to her feeling about, when she tells you that dream, you're right. It is just a dream. We all have bad dreams. You could even tell her, "Oh, that dream sounds so scary. I could see how that must have been such a scary dream and didn't feel good." And then give her the reassurance that, Mommy would never, ever leave you. I'm always going to be here for you, or, and however you can give her that reassurance. Again, not to take the dream personally. It's not, her trying to hurt you or something that she's intentionally, or even saying, "Oh, see, you're a bad mom, so in my dream you showed up this way." It could even be the fear of losing you. It doesn't have to be you are a bad mom. It could be the fear of losing my mom is so scary. I'm losing my home of my mom and dad. I'm losing all these things. What if I lose my mom? What if they take me away from this home and make me part of a new family? Who knows where the fears are coming from? But we want to really make sure we don't take it personally. And so when she tells you that dream, I would say, I could see how that was so scary. That sounds really scary. And then quickly, so she knows you're not saying it's scary because it could happen, but that it's never going to happen, that I would never leave you. I'm always here. You know that. You can even ask her to show her, and that she can tell you if she's afraid of losing you. I would give her that space too, to let you know, "Yeah, Mommy, when I had the dream, I thought maybe you don't want me, or maybe you this, or maybe you that," and see if there's something more that she's trying to tell you by telling you about that dream.
Okay. So, putting the dream to the side, what else can I do? Because she's got other characteristics which tells me she has got anxiety. For example, let's say a while ago we were going through her old toys. There are some toys that belong to when she was 3 or 4 or 5. And I was saying that, okay, we need to declutter. So let's go through the toys, the baby toys. We're going to just give them to charity or throw them away somehow. So, and she has got a very, very hard time letting go of certain toys that she hasn't played with them for years. And I guess actually this is a characteristic that her dad has. He doesn't throw things away at all. He always thinks that, we got a whole shed at the back of the garden full of stuff that he hasn't used them for years, but he doesn't throw them away either. So I don't know. And also her dad is also is quite anxious man by nature.
Yeah.
He's always been anxious. He's a very, very anxious and passive-aggressive person. But
So that so
what is
that's
it?
going to tell us, that tells us she's going to genetically get that anxiety, and as you're also imagining, she's seeing him act in these ways that might make her feel the same way about losing things, and she's losing something really big, as I was saying a few minutes ago, losing the family or that sense of family. So holding on to things might have even more of a meaning to her now, or even holding on to this is when I had my family together, or whatever else might be attached to those memories, is something we might be able to understand. And I'm not saying that means she should be this way. We want to encourage her to not throw things away, but we also want to make sure the way you said even before, I'm the one who tells her do this, don't do this. You might be coming at her in a way that makes her feel controlled or forced to do some things that make her feel even more anxious. So if someone is holding on to some things and you say you have to throw these away or you have to give these to someone else or to charity, that can feel different than giving her some feeling of power or control over this herself. That what do you think about giving away some of your toys to charity? And let's see what she says. So, making the conversation more about actually a dialogue of her sharing her side rather than telling her what we're going to do and then getting upset that she doesn't do what we think she should do about the situation. And
Okay.
so,
All
if
right.
she's anxious, the more you make her feel bad about her anxiety, and this is actually going to be a challenge for you too, because you're saying you feel like anxiety and these traits are things she has gotten from her father or her father has, and you clearly are not going to have a very great feeling about her father, I'm assuming, based on everything that's going on. When you see those in her, you're more likely to react negatively to them because they remind you of her, of him, or maybe you don't want her to be like him, and so you want to get these things out of her. But she's still 50% genetically his child and 50% raised by her as far as, up to this point. And so she's going to be like him in a lot of ways. And we have to accept that and make sure we don't make her feel bad about being who she is.
Sure. What advice do you have for somebody like me who deals with, and because at the moment you see I'm like a firefighter. I'm fighting at so many
Yeah.
corners. Sometimes I don't know what's going on. I got this court case going on. I have got this dilemma of COVID-19 and how I've been affected professionally by it, which hasn't been great at all. And I have got my child who's, of course, she's my first priority. But at the same time, because she is on her own, she needs quite a lot of attention. She's not a child who can entertain herself. And over this COVID-19, we used to have quite a lot of play date all the time, filling up her, as your dad always suggesting, buy friends for them, get them busy, get them occupied with good friends. This is what I've been doing all the time.
Yeah.
But during the period of lockdown, we had no other choice. We were stuck really inside. But it's just trying to all the time stay interactive with her without actually those feelings you just mentioned, bubbling up to the
Very
surface.
hard, yeah.
I found it hard, really hard. So what
I'm
advice
sure.
do you have for me?
So I didn't mean to, I wanted to let you talk, and then I was looking at the time. We have to go to a commercial break, and I want to give us more time. So I'll keep that in mind, and we'll come back after the break and talk about that.
Hopefully
Okay?
my battery's not gone.
I hope so. If not, I'll give some thoughts over the air. But I hope you'll still be with us. Okay, let's
Thank
go
you
to the
very
commercial
much.
break.
Thank
Talk
you.
to you soon. All right, we'll be right back. Welcome back. Before the break, we're with the caller. Let's go back to her now. Caller, are you still there? The phone's still working?
Yes, I'm still here. Yes, yeah,
All
I'm
right.
still
I'm
here.
glad we
I'm
still
glad
have you.
that my phone is still here. So
Okay,
yes,
good. The phone is still working and has enough energy. I think you're trying to see, can you have enough energy to take care of everything you're dealing with, as you were saying before the break? And you listed all the things you're experiencing or going through, and it is a lot. So we first have to acknowledge that and recognize it is a lot of things you're dealing with, going through a divorce, COVID affecting your career and COVID in general, how it's affecting all of us, creating a little more anxiety or uncertainty in what we experience. And then very importantly, and probably most importantly, being the mother to a 9-year-old girl and how to be there for her the best. And we know that divorce will likely be hard on her, but how do we make it have the least negative impact or make it the best we can make it for her. So that's it is challenging. So we can recognize that, and it's something that you really want to make sure you're aware of what you are feeling, because there is a lot for you to go through and a lot that you'll be feeling, and making sure as little as possible that spills over onto your daughter, because it's likely that it can when you're so overwhelmed or going through so much, that putting that onto your daughter is what we want to make sure you don't do. So I would highly recommend being aware of either how you deal with your feelings, one, but also considering speaking to a therapist or someone away from the home, away from the family, that you can process your own feelings and what you're going through, because we want to make sure there's less of that to spill over onto your daughter. Because what you're describing to me is that it's hard for that not to happen at this time with everything you're dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. For example, one of the dilemmas I have to say, I come from a family that my dad had lots of anger. He had, I think today's terminology, you would say that he has rageaholic. So he had, the way he was managing us, life, everything was through his anger. He still is. He's 82 years of age, but when you are next to him, you can see anger is just bubbling up. He just needs something for just go off completely. So I had quite a lot of anger myself as when I was younger, and it was through the process of working on myself, having therapy, I noticed that it was all learned anger. Of course, there were some elements that were contributing towards it, but that was how I learned through him that this is how you're supposed to be managing things in life. If people don't listen to you, or if things don't go your way, I was either angry with people or I was angry with myself. And it took me years to figure things out for myself to get out of that anger trap. But nonetheless, there are some days that when things get too much, when there are so many emotions going on at the same time, I just fall back to that anger. I fall back to that trap that I worked so hard to get out of, and I get angry. And when I get angry, I just don't know what else I can do. I somehow feel so powerless. And I don't want to be that person at all. And for me, not to get angry, this is a very important task that I set myself every day, that I don't want to get angry. But when you got so much going on, sometimes it's hard. It's hard not to get angry. Every time I receive a letter from my solicitor and from my lawyer, and I'm sure you know that charges are so significant. Every time they exchange letters with another solicitor, they send you another invoice, another bill. And I know half of it is completely unnecessary. If my husband was cooperating with this divorce, we would have been divorced, I don't know, a year ago with half of the cost. And it angers me that why we have to spend all this money, which is our money, by the way. And this is the money we could have spent to have a better life, both of us, when we have a separate life. And our child is going to have a much better life. Why he's making us to get to this point that we can't talk even to each other. Every time I'm trying to have, because when my lawyer said first thing, he said that, look, the more negotiation you can do between yourselves, the more money you save, the less cost, the less work I have to do. So trying to see what negotiations you can do yourself, what agreements you can get, and we take it forward from there. I can't get agreement with him on anything, nothing. Everything has to be done in writing through solicitors and through courts and through that. And that angers me a lot.
Of course. And it's understandable, your anger makes sense to be frustrated by this, to go through these things, feel like it's a waste of money, dragging things out. It's understandable that it's frustrating and making you angry. And you could look at that itself, but also going back to how much anger you're showing to your daughter, that's your responsibility. So some of these things might be out of your hand, what your ex-husband are doing, or soon to be ex, the husband you're divorcing from. You can't control everything he does. Maybe communicating with him in different ways might allow for some better cooperation, but you can't control what he does, but you do have control over what you show to your daughter. And so earlier we are talking about her anger, and I was saying, of course, it could be a lot of causes, but I want to make sure we don't let you off the hook. And it's not about blame, but an understanding that, okay, if I'm showing anger to my daughter, or she sees me getting angry, or especially if I show it to her, I can expect or understand she's going to give me some back. That's usually how anger goes. Anger, unfortunately, usually becomes kind of like a cycle. When we introduce it into a system, it kind of comes back at us in some other way. So the more anger she sees from you, the more anger you get from her. And it's not to blame you, but especially we don't want to blame her or get upset with her when she's angry, and recognize she's going through a lot. You're going through a whole lot. I could see that from everything you shared, but your daughter is going through even more and completely out of her own hands. She's being done, this is being done to her, going through this divorce. Maybe it's the right choice you're making to make the divorce happen, but she has no control over that, and it just has to experience all these challenges and pains. So we want to make sure we put ourselves in her shoes a lot too, that she's the one going through probably the most, or in some ways because she's the smallest, affected the most. And that's why I would go back to you seeking help. I know you're saying you already have expenses piling up with the court and COVID affecting your business, but it could be helpful for you to go through therapy again to deal with that anger. Of course, you can do things like physical exercise, meditation, talking to friends and other people that might help you. But your duty right now is to have the least amount of anger to bring home to your daughter. And, when you were sharing before, I felt it, even the anger, and I tell her to do this, I tell her to do that. One of the ways you're going to probably respond to what you're going through is to try to control her or want her to do things you want, because it's going to make it easier on you, which is understandable, but not fair to her to say, well, now because I'm going through so much, you have to make my life less stressful by doing what I want, or not doing what I don't want, or listening to me, or taking orders from me. That's not going to help the situation to make her feel like she's going to be responsible in some way to reduce your anger or to not add to it, which is why it's so important for you to continue working on managing your anger so you're not giving it to her.
Yeah, I see your angle now, and this is an angle I never covered. Sometimes when things get, on the top of each other, and they pile up and they pile up, and coming from the background we come from, we've been raised as Iranian women that we're supposed to just put up, whatever, no matter how much things they pile up, you're supposed to handle it. You're not supposed to, it's a sign of weakness if you turn around so that, I can't take no more. Yeah. And, but, yeah. So, my concern was really about her. And I think I have listened to your dad's CD about single parents about 10 times so far, I'm not exaggerating. And I know that CD back to front. But he just said, I don't know what else I can do, but I guess if you think therapy or... just out of curiosity, talking to friends, I know when you talk to a therapist is different because they are professionals. They got a skill set to ask the right question, listen in the right way. But would that be talking to good friends would be some form of substitute, or you think that's the no? You shouldn't really share anything with friends. It's just a kind of the...
No, I wouldn't say it's a no-no to share. Yeah, well, I definitely don't think it's a no-no to share with friends. In general, friends, family can provide a very unique type of support that a therapist also cannot. Now, yes, what we share with whom is something we should consider. That's the good thing about when you tell a therapist, you can freely tell your therapist anything, knowing that it in no way is going to come back to anyone or come back to hurt you in some way, which is very nice. And that's one of the things that helps make therapy effective. But with family and friends, it's a little more complicated. So we can't think that we can just say anything to any of our friends and it doesn't affect us in any way. And it depends on the friend. There's some friends that are helpful in the advice and support that they give and some that are not. And people sometimes start to learn that even though someone might be their best friend or a very close friend, there's some things that going to them with or about they don't find helpful. So maybe you don't have to tell them or go to them, even if they are someone that's close to you. That's okay. Not every friend is going to be a good confidant, especially for every type of issue or thing that you're going through. So I wouldn't think it's a substitute. It's another layer or type of support you could get. But I think a therapist will, as you mentioned yourself, provide a different kind of insight and support that will help you manage your feelings in ways that a friend really can't. And, with friends, it's not going to be as consistent. Maybe they won't always be there. It's a very different type of a thing to rely on that. I would say if you see a therapist, it doesn't mean now don't get any support from your friends, but you can have both. I think going to a therapist would be a very different process. And like you said, very often people in general, but Iranians and then Iranian women have this pressure that you're supposed to take it all on, especially let's say as the mom, become like a martyr or just suffer, and asking for help even could be seen as a weakness or that you can't handle it or even that you don't love your kids enough because you should want to take it all on yourself, which is not true. Really, to be loving to your kids, you have to take care of yourself the most so you can give them the most as well. Because if you're not okay, as you're realizing, if you're stressed and overwhelmed, you're more likely to get angry with your daughter or be short with her or pass some of that feeling on to her. But the more you take care of yourself, that can be, in a lot of ways, the most loving thing you can do to your daughter, to reduce your own stress and your own anger and to manage your own anxiety. That's the most loving thing you can do to her, because then she won't have to carry that burden or be inflicted with the pain of what you're going through. So I would highly recommend that based on everything you say you're going through. I understand the financial constraints that might be involved when you already say you're concerned about finances, but it could be a very good, I don't want to say investment in a way, but in a way it's like an investment, but a way of taking care of yourself and in that way taking care of your daughter. Always parents have to make sure that my kids can come to me for emotional support or to take care of their feelings, but they are not supposed to take care of my feelings at all, whether it's explicitly or unconsciously I'm doing that towards them. That's not for them to take on or to be affected by. And so that's one of the ways you could do that is by going to a therapist, have that space to deal with your feelings or help you deal with your feelings so you bring less of that to your 9-year-old daughter.
Thank you. And to just, I'm conscious of time. Just to finish the conversation, may I just ask you, would you, I know you are really into reading books, and every week I listen to you when you have got the highlights of the book that you have read and make your recommendations and all that. That was very interesting. But are there any books or is there any specific book that you can recommend that it would be helpful to somebody like me by any chance, please?
Sure. I mean, so, this is not about parents going through divorce. There are some books on that. I don't know a good one, but one that comes to my mind because of what I was just saying, it's called Parenting from the Inside Out by Daniel Siegel. And the reason why I'm saying that could be related to what we were just saying is that it's recognizing our own issues and how the better we're mindful and understanding of that, the less we can allow it to impact our kids in a way. So you might find that interesting in seeing some of those insights. As you're saying, you're aware of, thankfully, the anger your father had and how that has affected you and how that's become your learned way of dealing with feelings or when things get out of control or go a way you don't like. So that's good, but you can probably go a little bit deeper with that. So that would be a book. I think it's actually a good parenting book in general for anyone, but might be more relevant to you. It's Parenting from the Inside Out by Daniel Siegel.
Daniel Siegel. Like
Siegel, yeah.
The bird.
It sounds like the bird. Yeah, it's a same sound, but it's Siegel, I believe.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you ever so much. I really appreciate your time. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And
Likewise.
I have to say, I've been a big fan of your dad for years, and now you're a fan. So you're
we're happy as a family to have you as a fan. Thank you so much for the support. Wish you all the best and the best to your 9-year-old in this whole process.
Thank you ever so much.
All right.
Have a
Take
good
care.
day.
Have a good one.
Goodbye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Going into our last commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Welcome back. So in the previous segment, I was talking to a caller about their divorce and what they were going through. And so I wanted to share some thoughts about that and that process. Divorce is, of course, a very challenging thing for anyone to go through, any family to go through, even if it is the right choice. So we have to be ready for that, that even when we are choosing divorce, usually it means we think it's the lesser of two evils or the thing that's not as bad as the alternative of staying in the marriage. And it's something that we have to take very seriously, that even if it's the right choice doesn't mean it's easy, or doesn't mean it's going to be simple, or doesn't mean that your kids are not going to be upset at you or mad at you. A lot of times I've worked with families that they say from at a young age, we asked our kids if they wanted us to get divorced and they said no, so we didn't get divorced. Now, I'm not advocating divorce as in people should get divorced, but what I'm saying is that you want to make sure you don't think that a child can be the one to make that decision completely when it comes to something as serious as a divorce, especially when almost always a child or children are going to say no to divorce. I have seen it in some cases when a marriage is really, really bad and the children maybe are a little older and can see how bad it is, but usually because of how scary it is and sad it is for children, they're going to say no to divorce. And we can understand that. They don't know. Does that mean I lose my mom? Does that mean I lose my mom and dad? Of course, they are losing something. They're losing that family and that structure that they had. Dealing with all the changes is scary and sad and a lot for them to deal with. So we can understand that. But really, divorce is a decision that the parents need to make together. And related to the kids, a very common statement that people make when it comes to divorce is they say, we stayed together for the kids, which usually is used as an excuse to not go through the process of divorce because it's scary for the parents as well, or challenging, or has issues about it that they don't want to face. So they say it's for the kids. And so what I always tell families is don't just stay together for the kids, work together on the marriage for the kids. So it's not enough to just say, well, the marriage is going really bad, but we think divorce is going to be hurtful, so we're just going to stay in this marriage. You can make that decision to stay in the marriage with the decision also to work hard and do everything you can to make the marriage better. So it's not really just such a binary choice of either divorce, not divorce. But if you decide not to get divorced, it also has the element of what now? What are we going to do now to improve this marriage, to make it better? Obviously, if you are considering divorce, that means that there are some big problems and issues which are affecting the marriage and definitely affecting the kids as well. So if it's having an impact on the kids, we want to do something about that. So we don't want to just stay together and continue to have our kids suffer in whatever we're creating. We want to stay together and work to reduce that suffering, to make things better for us and for the whole family and for the well-being of the children as well. So we don't want to get caught up into this binary decision of stay together or divorce. Yes, if you get divorced, that side might be more clear. Of course, a lot of things you can do there. But stay together shouldn't just mean continue with business as usual. It should mean stay together and work very, very hard to make things better in this marriage going forward. So we don't want to make that decision so easy for us that we're staying together. And related to that, a lot of times parents will say, our marriage is not good, but it doesn't affect the kids. We're very good at hiding the fights and the disagreements from them. And I definitely think it's a good idea to make sure you don't have big arguments and disagreements in front of the children. That would be very hurtful and even traumatic to them. That is important. But you would be fooling yourself to think that if you're in an unhappy marriage, it has no effect on the kids. As I often tell parents, there is hot bad and cold bad. Hot bad in a marriage means there's fighting and yelling and that kind of toxicity that the kids are being exposed to, which is very hurtful and negative. But there's also cold bad, meaning that when two parents are not in love or not loving towards each other, the kids feel that absence of love or that coldness as well. In a way, we could think of that coldness as creating a temperature in the home. It feels cold in that home. It feels loveless. It doesn't feel safe and good and warm and fuzzy emotionally because there is that lack of love. So I've worked with people as adults or teenagers, and they say, I went to my friend's house and saw my friend's parents like kiss each other on the cheek, and I was just blown away because I never saw something like that in my home. I never saw that kind of love and affection in my house. It felt foreign to see two people express that it actually happens in real life. I thought maybe it's just in the TV shows and the movies. So your kids are going to feel that absence of love too. Don't think you are fooling them that just by avoiding conflict and avoiding bad fights, they are somehow okay or nothing negative is happening. There's bad things that can happen that we experience that are positive, as in positive that we see something that doesn't exist normally. Let's say like fights, that's a positive bad. And then there's negative bad, like a lack of love. So we don't want to fool ourselves into thinking a loveless marriage has no impact on the kids. And then if you do decide to get a divorce, it's very hard to not become adversarial with your ex or soon to be ex. Even the court system in countries like the United States, it makes it very adversarial, or for most people, it becomes you versus each other. You are trying to win in this battle, in this war. But unfortunately, what we see is that when we create a war, as I was saying with the previous caller very briefly, you might think you're shooting at your ex-partner across the field, but actually your kids are in between you and them. And they are taking the bullets. They are taking the majority of the wounds and the pain and the hurt that's going on in this war. You can't hurt your ex without hurting your kids in the process. And so you have to ask yourself, what am I doing here and who am I doing it for? Of course, you're responsible to yourself to make sure you're okay, to take care of yourself, and we can't neglect that. But your priority must be your kids. Especially your priority must be my kids doing well, surviving, more than me winning against my ex-partner. It's very easy to get pulled into that type of battle just because of the adversarial system we have in the courts, but also because people think that's what they're supposed to do, so the other partner might send the first shots. You might say, I didn't start this, but once my ex-husband or ex-wife started to send these shots at me, I had to fire back. And yes, at some level, we have to take care of ourselves and defend ourselves, but we have to be aware of what kind of effect those shots are having on our kids. So very commonly, unfortunately, they'll say, when they go to their mom's house, she says all these bad things about me. So when they come to me, I say all these bad things about their mom and their family and all that, because I'm trying to make it even. I want them to know I'm not the bad guy and my family is not the bad people, that they are actually the bad people. But this is exactly what I mean by you're firing these shots thinking it's at your ex, but you're actually sending them through your kids to get to your ex. They are the ones that are taking that majority of that negative impact and being hurt by it. So as hard as it can be, we want to take that higher road if your ex is saying mean things or negative things about you, to realize that's just hurting your kid. If your child is given some poison, do you think giving them more poison is going to help them because you think it's a different kind of poison or a poison that you like? You're still giving them poison. You're still hurting them. And I've seen it time and time again that when kids become older, you ask them about divorce they went through, and they might say, when I was younger, I remember my mom or my dad would always say these negative things, and the other person would not say negative things. So I thought, my mom is right to say these bad things about my dad or vice versa. But then when I got older, I realized that the partner or the parent that wasn't saying those negative things, it wasn't because they had nothing to say and they were the bad guy. They were actually the hero. They were the good one who was trying to take care of me and didn't want to say negative things about my mom or my dad and the family because they knew that would hurt me. They knew that my mom or my dad is 50% of who I am genetically, and their family is still people that I'm close to. By saying mean things and negative things, how can that be helpful? So they actually realized the good in that parent that didn't say anything bad. So when we get caught into a war, we can get caught up in the most recent battle and winning that battle. Oh, you said something mean. Watch me see something even more mean that will prove that I'm good and you're bad. But we lose sight of the bigger battle, which isn't even a battle or a war, but it's in nurturing and loving your kids and taking care of them. Your responsibility isn't to win against your ex, it's to win as a parent and being the best parent you can be. You want to show your kids you love them by the actions you take and sometimes the actions you don't take. Not engaging in things that you know will hurt them, even if in the moment it makes you look worse or makes you look like the bad guy, makes you look like your partner was the good one and you're the bad one. But if you realize that your goal is to make sure your kids get the love they receive rather than you winning, you can make that choice, as hard as it might be in that moment to resist. As powerful as it might make you feel your ex is becoming, in the reality of it, even if you lose in that way, it's probably better for your kids. If they got a little bit less poison, they're going to be doing better off than if you gave them some more poison, maybe won in this battle in this way. So divorce is always going to be hard, even when it is the right choice. That doesn't mean it's going to make it easy, and that doesn't mean your kids won't be upset or hurt by what's going on. Sometimes parents think, well, it was the right thing to do, so why are they mad? Well, even if it's the right thing to do, but it's hard, it's still going to be painful for them. It doesn't take that away just because it's right. But your role as a parent is to make it the least harmful as it can be. Hopefully you have a partner who will recognize that, and together you will still co-parent to minimize the harm done to your children, but sometimes you don't have that, and it's up to you to make sure at least you give the minimal harm you can to your kids to make sure they get affected the least by the divorce and least possible way. So divorce is going to be tough. Anyone who's going through it, I understand it's challenging, but we want to do our best to make it the least impactful and the most positive it can be for our kids. That brings us to the end of today's show. As always, thank you to Ghazaleh, who's in the studio making sure I can do this show on Wednesdays. You've been listening to In Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee. Have a wonderful day.